Good morning. Our theme is this month all about a personal experience of the living Spirit within. And our topic today is we look too far away for this living presence within. It comes from a piece of writing. Actually, it's quoted in your bulletin. It captures this idea that sometimes when things get excited like they do in the holiday season or super busy, we can start to look everywhere else for the living Spirit except real close, like within us. It's a really good reminder for this time of year to stay close to that personal experience of the divine. And if that's something that's on your intention list for the holy season, as you heard from Chelsea, our host, we've got all kinds of amazing services to help you do just that. And for the benefit of our video viewing audience, you can find out information about our services on our website at www.cslsr.org. Now, this season, if you like, can be symbolic of a time for rebirth and renewal and celebration. It's almost as if life is prompting, this is how I feel about life, is prompting me to get ready to begin again, to get back on track. Kind of like nature is, shortly after the solstice, it's going to start that slow move towards the lengthening of the days. I like that. And at the center for spiritual living, we tell this story of renewal by means of the Christmas story sometimes, both to honor the birth of the teacher Jesus of Nazareth and also to have a personal recommitment to staying aware of that presence of Spirit within us, to let it guide us to our own new beginnings. Now, that presence within, at Christmas time, we call it the consciousness of Christ within, in honor of what Jesus of Nazareth taught us about the close personal relationship of that Spirit within us. And at our candle lighting services, we each get an opportunity to light a candle as a symbol of our intention to let that consciousness, burn like a light in our hearts for one more year. It's a beautiful ceremony. And there are other beautiful practices that take place at this time of year in different faith traditions, like, for example, the Jewish holiday known as Hanukkah. I think it's pronounced Chanukah, but I'll say Hanukkah today. And some people wrongly think that Hanukkah is the Jewish equivalent of Christmas, which it's not. Not at all. No. It's a Jewish holy season that commemorates an ancient story, a story about not giving up in the face of oppression, even when things look hopeless. This year, Hanukkah begins on the evening of December 24th. So we will be lighting the menorah in our candle lighting service. It begins with the lighting of the first candle on the traditional candelabra called a menorah, the central candle surrounded by 8 around it, and it continues all the way through January 1st. Now, this 8-day-long holy season is also known as the Festival of Light, because it commemorates a miracle of light that took place in the history of the Jewish people during a time when they were faced with a very difficult moral and ethical choice. They were told, if you stand for what you believe, if you stand up for what you believe in, you will be killed. But if you give up your freedom and you give up your concept of God and you give up your ways, you'll be fine. What a choice. Ancient and modern. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Now, here's the story as best as I can tell. Now, keep in mind, I'm not Jewish, so please forgive me for any inaccuracies. About 167 years before our common era, all of the world was under the rule of King Antiochus Epiphanes. And King Antiochus had an idea that the whole world ought to be united under his rule. And the way he was going to do it was by adopting the Greek language as the universal language and culture for all of his kingdom. In fact, he insisted on it. He made it law. It's the Greek way or the highway. But something always goes wrong when a government tries to marginalize or destroy a culture. Or when a government tries to take people's rights and freedoms away. It didn't go very well in South Africa, where I was raised, where the white rulers insisted that all of the nations of South Africa take the language of the oppressor. It didn't go well at all. And it did not go well for King Antiochus either. Now, as it sometimes does, with a radically unjust and outrageous law, sometimes the way it goes is that it kind of sort of just slips into place. Before you know it, there it is. It became normalized because people accepted it. And for some, it wasn't altogether a terrible idea. It wasn't a bad idea. Some saw the advantage of it, of complying with the standardization. Some of the Jews even named their children with Greek names. Thaddeus, Bartholomew, Philip. These are not Jewish names. Look, I imagine some of them saying, if we all speak the same language, we can talk to each other. There'd be more opportunities. Economic strategy would be increased. It could be a good thing. Thinking about this standardization got me to thinking about the first time I went to Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, there is this super long escalator that goes, I think it may be the world's longest escalator that goes to the top of a mountain. It's an outdoor escalator, and it was really exciting to go up the top, and I got to the top, and there was a Starbucks. I was both thrilled and kind of disappointed. And it reminded me of traveling to so many other countries and starting to notice the appearance of McDonald's, 7-Eleven, Starbucks, Coca-Cola, and other signs of the American culture spreading across the world, just happening. Well, you don't have to go to the rest of the world to see it. Just visit any mall in America, and you see they're the same. I guess on one hand, there's the convenience of familiarity gained, but on the other hand, there is this loss of character and authenticity. It's the leveling out of things into ordinariness. I think it might be what happens when diversity is no longer valued or protected or preserved. Then a horrible sameness creeps in, and non-compliance with the sameness can be a difficult thing. You can see it in our airports in America. Major city airports are all the same. No matter what the city is, it seems they all have the same booksellers, the same fast food vendors, the same travel electronic device vendors, the same coffee shops, the same. In our story about history, the standardization of the economy wasn't the real problem. Oh no. The real problem showed up when this king, Antiochus, started to tell the people, so good, now you're talking Greek, now you need to adopt the Greek culture also. You have to think Greek, be Greek, worship in the Greek style. Well, imagine the President of the United States saying to the rest of the world, you all have to be American or I'm going to nuke you. Well, that's similar to what King Antiochus did. Now, although he didn't have access to nuclear weapons, and thank God for that, because a person like that ought not to have access to nuclear weapons. what he did do was he victimized people who did not agree with him. He killed people who refused to make the changes he declared. He appointed Jewish priests who were sympathetic to his ways and removed others who weren't. He outlawed the practice of Jewish ritual. He confiscated the holy scrolls and destroyed them. He took over the Jewish temple and he erected in there a statue of Zeus. And to add insult to injury, he sacrificed pigs in the temple. Well, some people resisted, even though it meant torture and death. But still, many people went along with it, maybe for the sake of survival. And others watched, waiting. Let's see how this would play out. Let's give it a chance. Except for one priestly family, the Maccabees. No, they led a revolt against the oppressors, and against tremendous odds, they managed to overthrow them and win back the temple. Now, I won't go into the details of the battle, except to say that it was considered miraculous that they won. And as astonishing as their triumph was, something even more amazing was to come. You see, when the Jews got their temple back, it had been defiled in horrible ways. They had to go about cleaning it up and rededicating it. And the oppressors had extinguished the temple lamp. Now, why is that so important? Because it was a symbol. It was a symbol of the eternal presence, and it was supposed to be lit forever. It was a symbol of holiness. It was a symbol of the presence of the divine. It was a symbol of guidance. It represented goodness, so it was very meaningful to people who came to the temple. So relighting it was deeply emotional and healing, except for one tiny little problem. They could only find one small container of olive oil to light the temple menorah, enough to last maybe only one day. And everybody knew that they couldn't make any more oil. Everybody knew it takes, you don't make oil overnight. It's going to take longer than a week even. And the city was in ruins from the conflict. What were they to do? So they prayed. And they gave thanks for what they had. And they used it. And with all of the dignity they could muster, they lit the temple flame. And the miracle of Hanukkah is that this flame burned and burned and burned and burned and lasted for 8 days, which is why during the season of Hanukkah, a new candle is lit every single night until all 8 candles are lit. There's so much to say about this story that I'm going to be leaving out because I want to focus on something. I want to focus on the courageous choice of the people to stand by their spiritual conviction and to refuse to crumble in the face of oppression and bullying, to refuse to go the way of the world and sacrifice their values or their identity for safety and convenience. Out of that courage, something totally unexpected came. Something wonderful and amazing, like it always does when we stop simply going along with business as usual and have the courage to stand up for what we believe in. Out of that, unexpected good always comes. Because standing up for human rights, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did, or standing up in the presence of a bully, like David did in the face of Goliath, or defying an authority who demands that you do something that you cannot morally do, like Rosa Parks did, will always tap into a power that is greater than oppression. Always. And it may take a long time and the costs may be high. But the costs of giving up your identity or giving up your spiritual life or giving up your freedom or your decency or your dignity is much, much, much more expensive. Hanukkah is many things. And for those of us who are not Jewish, it can stand as a reminder of the power in stopping when the whole world is going in a certain direction and saying, no, wait a minute, that is not for me. Sure, it can be easier going along with things, but I'm with those people in the story who said no. I imagine them saying, no, I won't wait to see how it turns out. No, I won't give oppression a chance to work out the kinks. No, I won't pretend there's no problem. I'm guessing in our story, some of them may have found it easier to not think about it. Maybe they told their relatives at holiday meals, I just don't want to talk about politics today. Can't we just have a lovely Greek-style family dinner together? For once, can we stop talking about the oppressed people and have a little downtime? Now, I'm imagining some of them in the story saying, no. Not when people's lives are at stake, their identity and safety at stake. No. I can't not talk about it. I learned to not talk about things in my family of origin. That's how we dealt with important things. We didn't talk about it. That's how we avoided conflict because we were terrified of it. But now I've learned something new. I've learned that silence rarely helps the oppressed. Silence often helps the oppressors to do more. Oh, how many times have I done it? Remained silent, pretended there was nothing wrong, waited it out to see what others would do, try to get my courage from somebody else more courageous, telling myself sometimes maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. Oh, I've done it. I've done it with bad relationships, not the current one, a previous one. I've done it with self-sabotaging habits. I've done it in times when I've been bullied and afraid. I've done it too often. I've stayed silent, numb. And my silence, I understand now, has broadcast a message of my agreement saying, yes, this is acceptable. Carry on. Now, the first action I'm going to ask you to consider today is this: to look into your life, into your world, to ask yourself, is there something going on that I am not acknowledging is a problem? And if there is something, and even if there isn't something, the second action is this: to make a bold and radical statement about your values and belief in the kindest way you possibly can, to let the light burn brightly in you. That's what the Jewish revolutionaries did. They cried out their allegiance to the spiritual truth of their heritage. Sometimes I think you and I have to be bold like they were when saying no to something, and as bold when we are saying yes to what we stand for, whatever it is that we stand for, and to let our hearts cry out with allegiance to that. Something like, I stand for inclusivity, I stand for compassion, I stand for religious freedom, I stand for equality, I stand for justice, and I stand for a world that works better for everyone. Oh, it takes courage to declare and affirm that, because it doesn't match what the world looks like. But it does match something inside of you, something inside of your heart. The living spirit in you in its form of love that is perfect as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be. And when you and I can feel that, that's when we can fully expect the miracle of being sourced and supported and lifted up in ways we cannot predict or understand. That's why I intend to live my life guided by it and nothing else. Now, you and I, we don't have to go into physical battle like the Jews did, but we might have to do some soul searching, and we might have to do some behavior changing. We might have to put on the brakes if we've just been going along. We might have to kick a habit if it's something like the habit of not attending to what needs to be attended to, or not speaking up to avoid uncomfortable feelings. I think it takes a lot of courage to keep going when it looks like the odds are stacked up against you. It takes courage to light a temple lamp when clearly there isn't enough fuel. I understand that. I was remembering the process of building this place. Oh, wow, there were so many times when it looked like we weren't going to have enough to build this building. There were times when we didn't have enough money, we didn't have enough time, we didn't have enough permits, we didn't have enough volunteers. And there were so many times during that process when it would have been easier to just not deal with it and walk away and simply comply with the lack. Sometimes that is exactly how I feel about the state of our world. There's not enough in me to address this. There's not enough hours in the day to do what needs to be done. There's not enough money in my possession to fund what needs to be funded. And there is a very important lesson in the story of Hanukkah. What did they do when they didn't have enough? What did they do? I'll tell you what they did. They used what little they did have, and it was extended miraculously. That is the message. If you have some love in you, express it. If you have some joy in you, let it out. If you have some power left in you, use it. If you have some courage, share it. If you have some light in you, burn it, and it will be extended miraculously by the living Spirit within you, which is infinite and not limited by any external circumstance. Don't wait until you've got enough. That's how we light the menorah in our hearts, by using what gifts we do have, whether it seems like it is enough or not, whether we can see our way through to the end or not. Because that's the way we open ourselves to the possibility of unexpected help, inexplicable goodness, powerful renewal, and the strength to carry on. As one Jewish scholar wrote, by lighting the menorah, we ignite the flame in our souls, that spark that cannot be extinguished, the one that will burn, not for 8 days, but for eternity. I invite you to breathe in with me and exhale together as we enter into a moment of prayer together, as each one of us turn our attention inward and consider the infinite one in whatever way best match our understanding. Whether we call it the light of the universe, or the mind of creation, or the ground of all being, or the infinite one, it's all pointing to this felt experience of union in the divine, where we feel our oneness with creation and each other. And from this felt sense of oneness, we're allowed to rise up in us a declaration of our connection to all beings. We're allowed to rise up in us our reverence for life. We're allowed to open our compassionate hearts, and we allow our minds to be clarified by that which we are contemplating, the truth of being. And with deep gratitude for this moment of shared prayer, and with an expectation of how it will propel us on a journey of harmony and compassion, we give thanks. And we release this word of prayer into the law, that aspect of the divine that always listens and responds to us. And we say together, and so it is.